Alright, man, peace. So Lakers legend and all-time great Kobe Bryant has been going through what seems to be a sort of basketball renaissance, meaning a rebirth. He's decided that he's going to make his presence known in basketball circles, not only due to his expertise in evaluating the game and its best players. Now he's going to go back in time and inject his own favorite Lakers squad, the 2001 Lakers, into the greatest team of all time debate. He states that he believes that his 2001 Lakers would beat any other team in history. And he has the right to say that, because I myself also list them amongst the best teams that I've ever seen personally. They're right there with the 96 Bulls, the 2017 Warriors, the 92 Bulls, 87 Lakers, 86 Celtics, 89 Pistons, so on and so forth. So he certainly has the right to list his team, the 2001 Lakers, right there with anyone. So, of course, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
For sure. All right, we talked about in the last block. Kobe Bryant has been talking a lot about his own legacy, the Mamba mentality. Recently, he was asked by Alex Kennedy of Hoops Hype, does he believe if he and Shaq had stayed together, would that team be cemented as the greatest dynasty of all time?
Let me say this before she continues. And I'm on record as stating that, yes, Kobe Bryant, as well as Michael Jordan, are trying to make sure that their legacy is properly evaluated as they see it should be, because they believe that LeBron James is being overhyped and overrated by the modern liberal sports media. And I'll also say this about Kobe Bryant. He was not the recipient of the favoritism from the liberal sports media back in his day that LeBron James is today. Now, there was an attempt to champion him as a possible usurper of Michael Jordan's throne, quote unquote, as the greatest player of all time. But one can tell that that was a lot more hype than what the liberal sports media is trying to do today with LeBron. Back in 2010, Kobe Bryant was able to win his 5th championship. He was only, I believe, 31 years old. And afterwards, you had certain sportscasters, particularly Mark Jackson, who was trying to champion Kobe Bryant as a player who was even better than Michael Jordan. And going into the 2010-2011 season, that was supposed to be the test, whether or not Kobe Bryant could match Michael Jordan's 6 championships. And they were going to use that as a basis to push him as being just as good as, if not better than, Michael Jordan. As we know, he flamed out in the playoffs. His team flamed out, let me specify. They got swept by the Dallas Mavericks, and that initiated a change in overall style of play and what the basic paradigm was for winning championships thereafter. No more hero ball. Now we move the basketball, we hit open threes. That's what the Dallas Mavericks did. And they ended not only the LA Lakers' short run as the best team in the NBA, but also that hero ball archetype. So I say all that to say this. It's very clear that Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan understand what the liberal sports media is trying to do. They're trying to controvert it. But I'll also say that I find that the response of the liberal sports media to what Kobe Bryant has been doing, which is basically just answering questions, I find it to be very conspicuous that they're attacking him so much. I think that it says a lot about how he's perceived as opposed to the image that is pushed and promoted for Mr. LeBron James. I think that Kobe Bryant, once again, has a much more alpha male, masculine energy than LeBron James does. And I think that they use that against him.
And to that he replied, quote, I'll take that 2000-2001 Lakers squad we had against any team in the history of this game, any team. Kevin, do you agree?
The 56 win 2001 team?
Well, let me say this. The 2000-2001 Laker team, they only won 56 games in the regular season. He's correct. But that does not stop many of these so-called NBA media pundits from evaluating the 2018 Warriors and saying that they're one of the greatest teams ever, and they only won, 58 games this regular season. I believe that Kobe Bryant missed a lot of games that regular season, and I think Shaq did as well. And that hurt them in regards to how many games they won in the regular season. If I'm wrong about that, one of you brothers can correct me, but I know at least one of those two players missed a lot of games during that regular season. But they were without a doubt right up there with any other team that I've ever seen in regards to dominance in the playoffs. They just totally trucked teams, and they were trucking good teams too. They trucked the San Antonio Spurs. And were it not for Allen Iverson and his outstanding performance in Game 1 of the finals, they would have swept the entire playoffs. Now, the 2017 Warriors are probably the only team that I've seen that played better in the playoffs. And, of course, they kind of gave in to the Cleveland Cavaliers in Game 4 of last year's finals. And also, Cleveland got extremely hot from three-point land. The 91 Bulls were also an extraordinary playoff team. I think they only lost 2 games that entire playoffs. They lost 1 game to the Philadelphia 76ers in the second round, where Jordan, I believe, had tendonitis in his knee and he scored 46 points in the old Spectrum in Philadelphia. And then in the finals, they lost Game 1 to the Lakers when Sam Perkins hit a 3-point shot. Not really to win the game per se. It was the shot that won the game, but it wasn't a game winner. Jordan had an opportunity to tie the game thereafter, and he missed the shot. Those were the 2 games that the 91 Bulls lost in the playoffs. They were also an exemplary playoff team. But yes, the 2001 Lakers in the playoffs, they may have been the most dominant team that I've ever seen, especially with the style of play that was utilized back then, which I think, to me, was the most defensive era, that era from the late 90s through the early 2000s.
No, that's a good team. I mean, it's a really good team. It's funny. I don't want to penalize them for, the modern game, but there wasn't as much stretch. Although, Fisher and I think Rick Fox were 39% shooters.
I think it's to judge each team in its era.
Right. I enjoy
how
imagining.
Dominant were they in that era?
I mean, how much fun watching Shaq chase around perimeter players.
Well,
against a small line. Then again, there's no one to stop Shaq.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, I've always said about this. People say, I don't know how Shaq would do in the modern game. Trust me, the modern game would partly fold around Shaquille O'Neal.
And let me say this also. They would put Shaq on Draymond Green, and Shaq would dare Draymond to make 3-point shots. It would really put the onus on Draymond to make sure that he was a heavy contributor offensively. Or really, all Shaq will be doing will be standing right in front of Draymond about 8 feet away and daring him to shoot. He would actually probably get more rest on defense than he did in his own era, when he had to guard big men who actually tried to score on him. So that's certainly a catch-22. On the defensive end, they would not be able to do anything to stop Shaq. I would like to see that Klay Thompson versus Kobe Bryant matchup, to see if Steve Kerr and the Golden State Warriors defense could sucker Kobe into trying to go 1-on-3 or 1-on-2 or even 1-on-1 against Klay Thompson and Andre Iguodala, to get him into that mode where he's jacking up jump shots. Because that truly was the code to defeat the Lakers back then. To see if you can get Kobe so caught up in his own offensive prowess that he would forget his teammates. That's what the Detroit Pistons did in 2004.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that's the case. This team was, in essence, considered the Warriors of their time.
Right.
Unstoppable, almost unfair. It didn't matter what they did in the regular season because at the end you knew they were going to be there. So there was that. But this is just another edition of Kobe doing the "Don't you forget about me."
Well, I also think it's just a case of Kobe Bryant answering the questions that are asked of him. Now, is there an element of I'm trying to inject myself into the GOAT conversation, and I'm not crazy about the new parameters that are being created for LeBron James to push him ahead of others who have succeeded on the grand stage more than him? I think that that's certainly there, and I think that that's valid as well. Kobe Bryant has the right to say, look, how are you guys going to make excuses for a guy who's lost 6 out of 9 finals and then tell me he's the greatest player of all time? I don't mind you saying that he's 3-6 in the finals. In 7 of his 9 matchups, he was the underdog. I don't mind that if you're just going to say he's a great player. But when your point is he's the greatest player ever, then that is what greatest players of all time do. They beat teams that are better than them. That's what they do. And or what they do is they perform so well in the regular season that their team has such great camaraderie, such great affinity with each other, how they play together, that when they get to the finals, they're not the underdog. That's the reason why other great teams in history were not the underdog. It wasn't necessarily that they had a better roster. It was that they had more focus during the regular season, so that by the time they got to the big stage in the finals, the people who evaluated them, who appraised their chances, said, we're going to make them the favorite because of how they played throughout the regular season. One of the main reasons why LeBron James's teams are consistently the underdogs, despite the fact that on paper they had bigger names, is because they don't play up to their standards, up to their capabilities in the regular season. They're constantly winning in the low 50s as opposed to the low to mid 60s, which you would think a team with the greatest player of all time will consistently be winning 60-plus games. They don't. So there's a reason why many of LeBron James's teams were the underdogs. But just to get back to the point, do I believe that Kobe Bryant is trying to make sure that he's not forgotten? Of course, and there's nothing wrong with that. When you've worked as hard as he's worked and other great players have worked, you don't want to be forgotten. That's why I bring up names like Hakeem Olajuwon, Moses Malone, Isaiah Thomas, and Dr. J. Because they don't promote themselves, so people forget about them and what they've done. Kobe Bryant is starting to experience the same phenomenon, and he's trying to fight against it.
We're going to have to pay for the rights to that if you sing anymore.
No more. That's it. We're good.
Yes.
There is all you got. Yes.
He's in all of our ears going, no singing. Do you guys have a nominee then for what you would say is the greatest team of all time?
It's this Warriors team.
This Warriors team, close.
Now you see what they're saying? The person in the middle just stated that the 2001 Lakers, they can't be the greatest team ever in his mind because they only won 56 games during the regular season, but these Warriors only won 58. Do I believe that the Warriors of the last 2 seasons are amongst the greatest teams ever? Absolutely. They're up there with anybody. But for the most part, what makes this Warriors team so superlative is that they optimize what this era of basketball is all about, which is the face-up game, movement off the ball, and long-range shooting. That's truly what they exemplify to the highest degree. So every team has to be evaluated according to their era. If you're going to ask me who the greatest team ever that I've seen is or was, I would have to say the 1987 Lakers. And right behind them, it would probably be a toss-up between the 96 Bulls and the 86 Celtics. And then right behind them would be the 89 Pistons. Or maybe the 91 Bulls. I would love to have seen the 89 Pistons against the 91 Bulls. Please keep in mind that the 1989 Chicago Bulls took those Pistons 6 games with a precocious Michael Jordan and a Scottie Pippen who had just become a starter, who was not a major contributor on offense. He was more of a swing player and someone who helped Jordan on defense, but he still had not found his feet yet, even on the defensive side of the basketball. And that team took the Pistons 6 games. They were the only team to defeat them in the playoffs, the Chicago Bulls. The Pistons swept everybody else. So certain people might say, well, how could you say that the 91 Bulls could beat the 89 Pistons, blah, 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 blah. No, those 91 Bulls, they swept the Pistons. And people try to make up all these excuses, well, it's because the NBA changed the rules. Well, please keep in mind that the previous 2 seasons, even before the NBA changed the rules, the Bulls were the team that gave them their greatest run in the playoffs. The Bulls were coming. It didn't matter what rules would change. They were going to defeat the Pistons in 91. So I'd probably have the 89 Pistons and the 91 Bulls dead even out of respect to the greatness of the 89 Pistons and how hungry they were. That would be a great series. But yes, the best team ever that I've ever seen is most likely the 87 Lakers. And then right after them, the 86 Celtics and the 96 Bulls. And then right after them, maybe the 91 Bulls, the 89 Pistons. Also, I have to give honorary mention to the 92 Bulls. And of course, the 2001 Lakers. All those teams, if they played in a tournament, who knows who'd win. I think that what would have hurt the 2001 Lakers, once again, is that one of their greatest players, that being Kobe Bryant, you could sucker him in to playing low-level basketball, meaning going one-on-one and not being as proficient as he should be. And we already know they would have had chemistry problems in their locker room because Shaq would have been upset with him, and then he would have lashed back out at Shaq. So I could imagine those 2001 Lakers playing against an intelligent team who would have said, you know what, we're going to let Kobe Bryant get off early and try to pull him into a Venus flytrap to make him think that he should want to have to get 50 points every night, take Shaq out of the game, and then double team him late and hope that he's not hot. If you can get him into one of those games where he's 8 for 25 or something like that, and that's something that great defensive teams did to those Lakers. Once again, look at the 2004 finals. Kobe Bryant shot 38% in those finals. So I could see high IQ teams trying to use that strategy against the 01 Lakers. Now, against these Warriors, the ball movement would have hurt a lot of those teams. But the defensive intensity that those other teams would have been allowed to use, I think, would have hurt the Warriors. They would have had to have become adjusted to that style of play very quickly. I would love to have seen the 2017 Warriors against the 87 Lakers. That would have been a hell of a shootout.
The 2 3-peat Bulls team.
Yeah, the second.
That's the thing, right. I mean, I sit there and I want, of course, the reflexive answer is this Warriors team, and it's certainly, I think, the most talented roster that's been put together, top 5 players deep at least, right?
And the funky thing, though, about
that recency bias?
No, it is recency bias, but in the sense that the game has evolved. Steve Kerr always talks about this. Like humans evolve, and we are more skilled than the people 10,000 years ago.
Allegedly. That's a philosophy. That's not fact.
You know what I never saw? Was the 60 Celtics.
Right.
There isn't a lot of NBA footage out there.
Right.
I mean, we can't watch, NFL films always did a
11
great
titles,
job.
it's kind of hard to argue with that,
wouldn't it be cool just to transport yourself for 48 minutes?
Well,
I say this all the time about the 1960s Celtics. I evaluate them like their currency that's been inflated. I look at their championships. They won 11 titles in 13 seasons. But here's what I have to say once again about Bill Russell. They never won a championship until he got there. They won their first championship in his rookie season. And he won 11 titles in 13 years. He retires, and they don't win again for 5 years. So you cannot tell me that he's not one of the most impactful players in NBA history. I don't care if they were only playing with 2 teams. Now, why do I evaluate their success like a financial asset that has been inflated? It's very simple. I've already stated this because they had the ABA that came into existence in the mid-60s, and also because they only had 8 teams. So I like to chop those 11 championships in half and say, for the sake of fairness, Bill Russell really won 5.5 championships. Maybe we'll round it up to 6. That still puts him on par with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Michael Jordan. And Kareem was not the alpha on all those Laker championship teams. He just wasn't. I mean, to be quite frank with you, I probably should have Bill Russell ahead of Kareem on my all-time player list. But I have Kareem above Bill Russell because Kareem played more in the modern era. But those 2 players, they can be switched. Either one. One could be 2, the other could be 3, or vice versa.
Well, and those second 3-peat Bulls, if you think about it, I mean, obviously Michael, Scotty, Rodman, right? But you have guys like Ron Harper who played on those teams as well. Like, there are a lot of guys, even that they're role players, that were very good.
They were just gritty defensively.
Yeah.
Another weakness of the early 2000s Lakers was that their basketball IQ was very low. And I'm sure that I'm going to get some Laker fans who get upset by that. But here's a fun fact, and you can look this up. Phil Jackson is on record as stating that he tried to avoid the Utah Jazz in those 2000 playoffs because he did not want his team going against the Utah Jazz because he felt like their overall basketball IQ would be too much for his team. Now, by 2001, may he have felt different? Who knows? But one of the weaknesses of those early 2000s Lakers was their low basketball IQ. One of their strengths was their great half-court defense. Rick Fox, Derek Fisher, Kobe Bryant, they did a great job guarding the perimeter offensive players.
Yeah, they stopped everybody. Yeah. We forget about their defense.
It is interesting that Steve Kerr is involved so deeply in these conversations.
Yeah.
He played for that Bulls team, the second edition era that you're talking about, obviously the coach of the Warriors. And you're right, he always says, look, anybody who's sitting there, and even when you get down to the LeBron-MJ debate, if you really match them up against each other on the court, you're talking about a guy who has a 20-year advantage in, nutrition and conditioning and
performance-enhancing drugs, allegedly.
And all of that stuff. I mean, you can't really put all those guys on the court together in any kind of hypothetical way.
Yeah, it is a story of evolution.
Right?
Yeah.
Bigger, stronger, faster, for sure.
But is it...
People forget, Michael Jordan did not start lifting weights until the end of the 1989 season. So we're talking about the end of his 5th year. He spent his first 5 years in the NBA not lifting weights. Had he been put through a rigorous weightlifting program starting in high school like many of these basketball players are today, who knows how much better he could have been throughout the 80s.
This is fun to argue with, and again, it goes back to the point of, hey, whatever players may come here in free agency, Kobe wants everyone to remember, and he's to me, he has earned that right.
Look, once again, I noticed many of these liberal NBA sports media pundits trying to attack Kobe Bryant. And I particularly noticed that most of them are females who seem to believe that they're going to use their intuition. They're going to get in touch with their feminine side and evaluate what Kobe's really saying. Now, do I think that there's an element with Kobe that, look, don't forget what our teams did? Yes. But do I think that Kobe feels threatened by other players? No, I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. I just think that he's trying to establish what the Lakers standard is in regards to how he views the standard of that franchise to be. That, look, you're not going to come to the Lakers and think that it's just going to be good enough to get to the finals. You have to win the finals. That's basically what Kobe Bryant is stating as I see it. I don't think that he's hating on any other players. I think that he's accomplished too much to hate on anyone. And I think that he does not like how the media has tried to grade LeBron's accomplishments on a curve and make all these exceptions for him, even though he constantly comes up short in the finals and people are constantly making excuses for him coming up short in the finals. Don't tell me how LeBron doesn't have any help when he's the general manager. It doesn't work that way. Because if you're going to do that, then let's go back to the 60s and let's reevaluate Wilt Chamberlain's career and make him the #1 all-time greatest player.
Right, that's what you get when you win 5 titles. Hey, by the way, we did all of this here, so just know if you come to my franchise, this is what you will be in the shadow of. Look.
No, I think that he's stating that if you come to the Lakers, our standards are winning finals, not just getting there. That's really what he's saying. And I think that they're being a little bit unfair to a player like Kobe. It'd be one thing if this was Derek Fisher or someone like that. They're acting like it's an insult to LeBron James that Kobe Bryant is appraising LeBron's career or giving him advice on winning. That's Kobe's right to do that. Kobe views himself as the greatest player ever. He has full right to do that. I think that when you get up into that echelon of anywhere from top 10 to top 15 to top 20 greatest players, they all believe that they're the greatest player ever. They all truly believe that in their heart of hearts. And they have the right to believe that, and they have the right to speak on other players. I also think that Kobe Bryant is speaking as a proxy of Michael Jordan. He's relaying a lot of the information, a lot of the ideologies that Michael Jordan taught him in the late 90s, early 2000s that helped him become a better player. That's why I stated in another video that Michael Jordan is Kobe Bryant's master. Kobe is Michael's apprentice. In a lot of different ways, not just basketball. I'll leave it at that. But I think that Kobe is acting as a proxy for Michael Jordan. He's letting LeBron know, Michael don't fuck with you, but I'm going to try to help you out. Because we played on a couple of different Olympic teams together. I know that you're an all right dude, so I'm going to let you know what Michael would tell you if Michael was on speaking terms with you. Michael's on speaking terms with me, and this is what he taught me. So I'm going to tell you to try to make you a better player so that you don't get frustrated so easily, so that you understand how to try to use some of your teammates. Now, we can debate back and forth how hypocritical that is on Kobe Bryant's part, because one can definitely assert that Kobe was not as respectful to his teammates as he could have been. And the fact of the matter is that Phil Jackson was the essential piece in forcing Kobe Bryant to utilize his teammates to the utmost degree. But, that's a whole other conversation. Point being is this. Kobe does not have to offer LeBron any advice. Kobe could just chill in the cut. And if he really wanted to respond to a lot of the sentiments that are put forth by the modern liberal sports media, if he really wanted to respond with vitriol, he could look at LeBron and say, LeBron acted like a bitch in 2011. He could easily say that.
Look, players are competitive, ego guys to each other. That's how it works. I'm trying to not use
say the word that he
curse words.
I'm the hatchet man here. Yes.
No, not that word. There's Kobe is the first one to describe himself as a word that begins with an A, and that's how guys are.
Yeah.
One of the best players, and Michael Jordan is one of the first people to describe himself that way, right?
But we could also consider it Magic's franchise. He's won as many titles as Kobe, and he's also in charge now.
Yes.
And Magic is also the greatest Laker of all time.
Absolutely. That's saying you're welcome to be here. Speaking of a guy who...
But anyway, that's pretty much it on that video. I think that the liberal sports media is starting to come down a little bit too hard on Kobe Bean Bryant. Do I think that Kobe has some ulterior motives in regards to some of the statements that he's made recently? Of course. But he has the right to them. It's kind of like your mother or your father. They may say certain things to you that you might not agree with or think are necessary or relevant, but they have the right to say them to you because they have been there. They've been certain places that you haven't been. And even if their personality type is not the same as yours, or maybe they're not exactly informed on what they're trying to inform you about, you still have to hear them out. And that's the case with Kobe Bean and LeBron. But anyway, peace.